Hello, hello, Crossroads Witches and other interesting magical beings. I am so excited to be here today because I have a super special guest in which I have sort of been super fan following for about 25 years. I hate to say out loud how long. Uh, Orion Foxwood is joining me today on this where we're going to chat with him. Hello, Orion.
Hi, thank you for having me on today. It's
I,
wonderful.
I was going to do a little list of the things that you accomplished. And then I realized it's like over a page long.
Oh, goodness.
And so I would like you to tell all of us a little bit about yourself. What are you proud of? What have you done?
Well, the thing I'm proudest of in a nutshell is just helping people, honestly, helping people. That's the thing I'm proudest of. I I was born in the Shenandoah Valley. Sometimes I like to start workshops saying I was born a coal miner's daughter, but someone already took that. So, I was born in the Shenandoah and an area that was a mixture of Southern culture, Virginia culture, and then coming down from through the mountains was then hill folk culture, with Appalachian culture, and grew up around root work. Except they didn't call it that, and they just called it spirit doctrine. That's all I ever heard it called, spirit doctrine, or just the work, or spirit work. No real names.
I I talk about that in the low country. I always heard it they were just doing a little something something.
Yeah, there are no real highfalutin words or nothing like that. Just, or they might say, and he's a praying man or praying woman, meaning, yep. And so I grew up around that, and I moved up to Maryland, where I'm at now. My mama said I defected when I moved up. She was so upset. She said,
You're
"You're
above the
moving north."
Mason-Dixie line.
She said, she cried. She goes, "You're moving up north, you're defecting." I said, "Mama, you don't even know what that word means." She goes, "I know, but it's bad." Bless her heart. So I moved up here, and then and got involved in lots of things. Was for years working for the government and DC government. I was one of the good guys, so, and opened 31 drug treatment centers in that city, and the equivalent to the Office of Minority Health for DC. And because of my deep devotion to diversity and equity, and justice, and fighting racism, fighting homophobia, fighting gender oppression. But I moved up here angry about a lot of things. Angry at racism, because I saw a lot of it. And um, angry at what women had been through. Angry at so it was a real adventure. When I moved up here, being angry at white people, not liking guys very much when you're a gay white guy. That's a challenge. You know, and it's been a real journey to become a healer as much as I can of all people. And so I think that preserving that loving spirit and serving people is really the thing I'm most proud of. Everything else fits into that, whether that's serving in the addictions prevention and treatment field, helping people, who are suffering, or whether that's teaching conjure and witchcraft to liberate people's spirits, their souls, from the shackles of bondage. I have a personal position that magic most rears its head when freedom is most challenged. And if you look throughout history, all the legendary and documented slave revolts that were all involving magic. The Haitian slave, really the slave revolt of Sans Dominique, later Haiti, led by General Toussaint. The slave revolt in ancient Etruscan tradition by Aragia, also known as Aradia, the daughter of Diana, who taught the peasants who were being oppressed, witchcraft to liberate them, all the way to the presence of hoodoo, um, as our country was going through, getting out of the ugliness of slavery and through emancipation and reformation, and it was hoodoo that often at least leaned some justice, leaned some assurance that some equity would be there. But magic most rears its head. Isn't it interesting right now in our world? There's more self-proclaimed, self-identified witches and other forms of magic workers probably than any one point in the history of the world. It's because in some ways freedom is most challenged.
We need
And
them.
yeah, yeah, we are standing at a time of great possibility and a dangerous fulcrum all at the same time. And we are not, and I know this has something to do with what I'm proud of, but I'm sorry, I'll just go right on in. Uh, right now, we got to all grow magic with muscle, and we got to witch up because the sort of executive call to order by the planetary spirit itself is a unified state of being. There can't be us and them anymore. It can't be like I'm working on a book right now with my friend Susan Diamond and my spiritual sister. And in the book, one of the things I say is we are all children of one mother, sister and brother, human and other. And we're at a time now when we can no longer say, well, that's your problem, but not mine. You know, or I use also the metaphor of throwing the trash, right? We throw trash. When people go, I threw my trash away. I said, no, you didn't. You threw it out of sight and into convenience.
Now it's
You know,
someone else's problem.
now it's some and the earth's problem. And so we're at this place where I think all of us who've made a journey uh, of self finding, of self healing, of re uh, of healing ourselves from the illusion of isolation, which is the core wound at the heart of humanity. You know,
Oh my gosh, I love that, Orion. I mean, I was sitting here when you were talking, thinking, you're so true. Magic comes when folks are othered.
you
And
know,
it,
the,
it's
um,
it's it's like the universe is giving you a tool that you need now.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And right now, when I look at the accumulative wisdom of my life and my journey, difficult and wonderful, all of the above, and I start seeing the things like the riot that went on at the Capitol building. My God, when I start seeing all the things that are going on, these are all the ancestral wounds that have not been healed. And we're at a time right now where we've got to witness each other's pain.
And
We
we have to
must,
help heal each
yeah,
other's pain.
we
I
must
think the
heal.
one thing for here in America is that we all stand on the same dirt, but we all have different stories.
Yeah, yeah.
And recognizing that all of these stories are a part of that dirt.
And colonialization, is an awful thing. And when we really think, on one end, people came here to escape oppression. So in that way, they were abandoned and being abandoned, but at the same time, then stealing land and harming indigenous people. Now we got abandonment being paid, going further, and then of course this transatlantic slave trade. How in the hell did we ever get to a place where
Greed,
humans? Yes, my God, it's
greed.
a wound. It's a disease of the spirit. So, but all of these things, one thing I've known, and this is the distillation of my journey, is that just as no wisdom leaves the world, no wound does either. And we have to, we got to heal it. We got to heal both those downline from the wounds, and we've got to heal those who are ancestors now. And I do a lot of work with something called the River of Blood, going
Right.
into heal ancestors, because too often we think of well, that was an event that happened then, right? And that is a person who was alive then, but we forget we're on one stream.
Yes, they just did a really fascinating study that's still ongoing through MIT using the grandchildren and great grandchildren of Holocaust survivors, where they are working within genetic memory. Several of these people are showing they have a trauma that they cannot explain.
Yep.
But it's when you go back, it's the trauma that their own families experienced during this time, during the Holocaust. They have a memory of it. There's a healing. We were speaking the river of blood. They're a part of that.
Their sorrow, well, they and their sorrow are swimming in our veins. And it's up to us. Each generation is born to redeem the wounds of the previous in many ways, right? And those who were born as magical folk, witches, root workers, conjurers, all the different names, right? Are what I call redeemers. And my mom made that real clear. She said, when you're born with the gift, when you're born with a blood that cannot be silenced, right? And so a blood that's already awakened. She said it's because you're to be a redeemer of the blood. You were born to say the buck stops here. You were born to bring those pains out and give them voice and heal the ghosts. We have a saying where I come from, and that is nobody heals until the ghosts speak.
Yes.
If
the spirit's restless, the family is going to find no peace.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And that's why it's so important that we do tend to our folks, both living and dead.
We are at a time right now when we look at all the stuff that's going on. Again, the thing that happened at the Capitol, and then the COVID, and the ecological disaster that's going on. A mass extinction event. This is a serious stuff. And so we're at well, I don't want to cuss, but
you can cuss. We're far enough in the video.
Shit or get off the can place right now as a species where we have got to heal each other. And we have got to, I'll tell you something. Some years ago, I went to my spirit wife, and I was kind of concerned because I would go to these gatherings and I would speak in the conferences and stuff, and people would be really lifted up. And it was because I did a lot of prayer, a lot of vision work to find what the people needed, so I could be medicinal, so I could be healing when I came. But then each year I'd come back, and the wounds were deeper. Ooh. Right? So I felt like I was putting a Band-Aid. So I went to Bree, who was my spirit wife in the fairy seership tradition, and I said, Bree, I can't do this anymore. As Martin Luther King said, a half truth is a whole lie, and I can't put Band-Aids on core wounds. I said there is a core wound that sits in the heart of humanity, and I think this. I say this because your books, which I think are wonderful, and they're all aimed at both empowerment, healing, and becoming conscious creators, right? And so I share this because I know the directive that sits in your spirit and your heart and directs your work. So I went to her and I said, there is a core wound in the heart of humanity, and I have to know it, because I said I can't deliver just Band-Aids anymore. I need to know how to be a true healing presence. She said, well, I can't tell you. I have to show you. Now, to show it inside you, and you may not live through this. Most don't. Well, that was encouraging. That was encouraging.
Like, and death.
Yeah. And I said, well, I'd rather die an honest man than to live knowing that I'm providing only a moment of a good feeling, a Band-Aid. And here's what I found after years, and she was right. I almost didn't make it through, because you have to go in and really look at the wounds in your own spirit. That's the source. as Swami Dumbo said, because I have a little sign up here. You remember Dumbo?
Oh, I like that.
My best friend gave me this little sign, and it's a quote from Dumbo. And it says, I'm looking at it right now. It says, the very things that held you down are going to carry you up.
Yes.
So powerful. So what I found was the core wound is the illusion of isolation. And the illusion of isolation and the abandonment, fear, fury, and shame that comes from it. That then also evolves into the desire to possess, control, the resentment of change, resentment that we cannot control everything and control life. And then the desire for absolutes, and that is the birth of fundamentalism, the I must be right, I must have the solution, I must, or else maybe I won't get back into the garden, I won't get back into heaven, all these things, and it's all connected to a feeling of abandonment, and all it is a side effect of our rapid growth as a species when in the advent of fire. Fire changes.
We have, society has taught us, society's created these masks that we're supposed to put on, and we all conform and act a certain way. We're given a false dichotomy of, this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is evil. Oftentimes you have to choose, is what we're told. And we have to understand there's always another way. I always, I talk with folks a lot at times about when I'm given two choices, I know that I need to look for the third option.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that you really are touching in on something that is, we're told that there's a constant conflict that's going on. There's a war, right? There's a war with this. There's a war. Well, the truth is, at some point, we got to get off the battlefield and onto the dancing floor.
I love that, Orion.
You really do. We have to make certain pieces. And I think the way we do that is to look straight on. I mean, we are witches. We are root workers. A root worker goes to the very root. A witch goes to where the angels fear to tread. The queen of our line, in terms of my witchcraft line, said to me, Orion, the witch who dreads is the witch who's dead. She goes, witches go where angels fear to tread. She said, when someone comes, they may be so gripped in their pain and their personal demon that you have to, this is very graphic, you have to shove your hand down the mouth of their personal demon and pull them out. And she said, and you must be afraid of nothing. She said, and you.
Absolutely. I had somebody ask me one time if I was ever worried because I like graveyards at night. And they're like, aren't you ever worried that there's something out there? And I thought for a second, I was like, no, I just assumed I was the something out there.
Right. And I always say I'm more concerned about those who live above the horizon than those below, meaning, the
Right.
ancestors bring so much wisdom. They're a mirror for us. I'm with you. I love graveyards. I love it. Always have.
I've been talking to dead folk for a very long time, and I find that's where I go to recharge at points. And I will say for viewers, please do not wander into graveyards at night that you are not accustomed to, you do not know the rules of, and that you're not aware of what's going on in the neighborhood around it. Please be safe. I'm really blessed with a very rural country little graveyard here local for me. When I was in the low country of South Carolina, I had country graveyards. I would never go into some graveyards at night, especially like if I was going in New Orleans to one of those graveyards. Don't go at night. You'll get mugged.
Very, very
like you said, what's above the horizon is very dangerous.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
that's all I worry about is physical realm safety. All right, whatever dark thing is in a corner, I'm going to grab a hold of and dance with for the evening.
It's funny. I've always seen graveyards which they call back home, they call them boneyards, the
Yeah,
boneyard, right?
boneyard.
And the boneyard. And but I never, for me, in some ways, a graveyard is a library of
Mm,
shelved books
I
that when I
love
spend
that.
time, there's wisdom in those bones, you know?
It is a library. That's where you go to learn.
You know, somebody in there often knows something about whatever dilemma that you're experiencing, you know? Um, and sometimes I love to go there. You know, it is a crossroads too. It's a place where owned by neither the living nor the dead, but by both.
I think you wrote Candle and the Crossroads book.
Yes, yes, and well, and then it was renamed. You know, it was re-released as I have it right here. Uh,
Okay.
Mountain Con.
For all of my viewers, I cannot recommend the new book enough. Is it the same? You added two?
Well, no, it was just re-released under a new title, which I like actually. Um, I like the other one because it was more poetic in a way, but this one, which is Mountain Conjure and Southern Rootwork, you know immediately what it's about. You know when you hear it. But
I knew
then
what your first book was about. When I saw it, I was like, Candle in the Crossroads. Oh, he's conjuring.
oh
Um,
yes, absolutely,
got my
absolutely.
hands on the book and it gave me some words that I didn't have. And when you were talking about the crossroads, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's other folks like me.
Ah, indeed, indeed. You
Um,
know,
and and so for all of you, you witches and other interesting magical beings, I cannot recommend this book enough for you if you are a lover of liminal spaces, crossroads, and graveyards,
oh,
looking
thank you.
into the conjuring, looking to American Southern folk magic. This is a good book to go to, witches. All right.
Thank you. You know, I was just talking to this wonderful man yesterday from the UK, and he was interviewing me about a book he's working on, uh, and it was all about the dark man at the crossroads. And he asked me a question. It was a wonderful question. He said, "Well, is the concept of the dark man at the crossroads, or the devil at the crossroads, or the many names, you know, uh, is it European or is it African?" And I said, "Yes."
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's one of those, and that's a very profound statement because that's one of those spirits and spirit concepts and that and types of working that straddles both people. You know,
It
the name.
straddles all folks, is how I believe.
Yeah,
Because if we look at our global mythology to crossroads, we find there's this figure.
absolutely. This mystical figure that stands at the threshold between this world and that, between this and that. One of the things I told him was, I said, do you realize that when you're in not at a physical crossroads, but that you're at a crossroads in your life, right? Where you're at an intersection between what has been and what is to be, and choices and options and all these things, right? And that dynamic tension that you feel when you're in your personal crossroads, do you realize you are sitting in the body of a god?
Yes.
You are sitting right, and he was like, what? I said, what we call the dark rider where I come from. But I said that the crossroads spirit that you go to see where these crossroads meet in a physical way. There's something to say about that too, by the way. I said that's one aspect of it. I said, but another is when we encounter the crossroads of our lives and we think that that God or that Loa or that spirit is out there at the crossroads. It's at all crossroads. I said, not only is it at it, it is the crossroads. It is the threshold itself. You know, so when you're in that, you are never in some ways closer to him than when you're sitting in the and at a crossroads within your own life, because that's when you would go to a crossroads anyway, is to go there to get clear on that intersect of life, death, luck, and love, and and
I
to have the way.
love that, and how important it is to understand that crossroads aren't only physical locations.
Right, right. Now, there's a little secret about these crossroads too that a lot of people don't know, and you may already know it, but if I can share it, what I was always taught is you go to the old crossroads, right? And the reason is the old crossroads were always based on, almost always, Native American trading routes, right?
Mhm.
And Native American trading routes were based off of animal migration patterns. And animal migration patterns were those animals followed the ley lines of the earth. So the animals originally were the ones who showed us where there is a crossroads, or what in old European witchcraft they would say a whale, a W-E-L-L, whale, and because when those two lays cross, excuse me, at the center is a spiraling force that is a well of power, and so uh, the old crossroads are the ones that are best. And even I always say, if you can get a good old country crossroads, it's a little bit more out there, but
We were in the Low Country. We're looking for an old crossroad that a church is burned down on.
ooh,
A church is
wow,
burned down on the corner of the crossroads. That's a good crossroads to work on.
wow,
All
wow,
right. And that has to go back into the hoodoo African American roots, because understanding that in that area during several times, especially early Jim Crow laws, many of the Black churches were burned down.
yeah, yeah,
Because they started to, the powers that be realized that, they kept him out of voting, that kept him out of off the sidewalks, but they're still getting together at churches.
right. And that's
And
power there,
we have to remember where all of our major civil rights movements in the South came out of churches. Martin Luther King was in a church speaking before he ever got out in public.
Yeah.
All right. And the community that the church represented is what they were trying to crack down on. But these crossroads are considered to be, for very dark workings, is what,
Yeah.
when you're going for one of these type crossroads. But they're quite prominent where I'm from, and they've been landmarked. And then also we look at the names of the crossroad. Like you were saying, some crossroads have Native American names to them.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
As opposed to Miller's Crossroad.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
And you look and that it is within the Native lore. And of course, if, like you were pointing out, the Native Americans were using the animals, they were already in tune. And the Black folk quickly figured out that that's what they were doing. So they used that knowledge as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
We
That's
have,
and it seems to be like you say, universal knowing that there is a netting in our world, a netting of meaning a net of these, as they call them, ley lines. In the old country, they also call them dragon lays or fairy trods.
oh, I
You know,
like that.
yep. And you know that the fairy tradition, in its purest sense, not so much in the sort of, and I'll say this as I say this about fairy. There's two ways that a new practice, in this case, when the Christian invasions were happening in pagan lands, and they wanted the conversions, right? There's two ways that you sort of get rid of the old. One is demonizing it, right? But demonizing doesn't really work so well in the end, because it's like saying, don't go there, don't ever go there. Well, telling someone that is like saying the best cookies are in that jar. Do not eat those cookies.
Right,
Do not,
right.
right? So that didn't work so well, even though, the Inquisitions and stuff were launched around that. But trivialization did do the damage. And so you see that in the fairy tradition where you watch beings, human size or larger, loom so beautiful that they could strike you dead with their beauty, and it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, right? And that's the trivialization thing. A fairy tradition is anything but trivial, anything but trivial. And in the old world, the fairy magic is the one magic that cannot be undone, and no god and no goddess can supersede them.
They're liminal entities. Like
The
they're neither nor, they're everywhere and nowhere.
They're the angels of the earth. There was an old man who used to come down from the Blue Ridge, and he would come down and he used to have coffee with my mom on his way to the farmer's market, right? He was selling hay and stuff like that. So, and he'd always talk to me. And in fact, he gave me my first charms because I'm a charmer, not like charming, right? A charmer, and it was past so many of the charms. And he would teach me, I didn't know he was teaching me, he was just sharing stuff. So this particular day, he was telling me, he was really giving me my first charm, and he was giving me knowledge about the fair folk. So he sets me down, and I'm listening attentively. And the truth is, I'm a little boy. What I'm really wanting is to get past what he's saying and get to the ginger snap cookies that he has. Right? Right? So I listened real carefully, and Mom wrote it down, and I came to memorize it. And he said, they call me Mike back home. He goes, Mike, you got to make right with them folk. Them folk is one of the names of the fair folk. Got to make right with them folk. They can snatch your prayers before they reach the ears of God. He goes, they're the original ancestors. We're the visitors. And when we break the laws of nature, we can't go to God for help because God don't know how. He gave the world to them. Is that chilling?
I love that. I believe that. I understand that. It resonates. All those words that I'm thinking, I'm like, yeah, that sounds right.
So powerful. Little did I know.
Spending time in different places, you come across, I mean, I've come across fairy circle and I'll be like, ooh, you feel the temperature, you feel the energy, you feel everything. And more than often, because I do not have the natural affinity that you have, I tiptoe quietly around, make sure I always turn and compliment them and tell them how beautiful their circle is, how amazing, it's so pretty. And I leave the area.
They are powerful.
As how I don't work with the fae folk. It's there's just not a lot of fae folk in cemeteries. For me, I've just never quite, like I said, we all have our own affinities. Several of the witches here in my local group love the fae. I love having folks around that have affinities for them, but my own personal self is, do not play with those.
Right. Well, you definitely tell people that the fair folk and the fairy traditions they're not so whimsical as you might think. They're beautiful, but there are things you must and must not do, and they have their own. There's very well preserved magical practices and seership practices and healing practices associated with it. They are absolutely potent. It's funny when I speak to old conjure elders over the years, some of these old root workers in the bayous or in the mountains, different places, and old witches, and also Native American folk, especially medicine folk. The moment my mouth opens and I start talking about the fair folk, they're 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 wanting to, everybody wants to hear because everyone's heard of them, and they know to be cautious, but they want to know. And that with Native people, and I've spoken to many people, many tribes, also many African tribes, who have all said, "Oh, now I know what you're talking about. We have those too." And they're like
They're
old.
everywhere, but it's these are entities that you're called to work with. It's more, you don't seek them out, they seek you out. If you are part of them, they're going to come find you. Is how I've always, what I tell folks, and they're like, I'm interested. And I'm like, well, if they're interested in you, then you'll be good to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, there's an
they
old,
have they have their own selection process. Is that, I don't even know the right words for this.
they are an independent species of us. Our belief systems mean nothing to, meaning when people go, well, I believe or I don't believe it, and I look at them and say, well, it doesn't really matter that much. They're there, whether you believe or not, doesn't really matter. You know, you do best to understand them and be in right relationship with them. And they literally occur everywhere. I went to Hawaii one year. They have the Menehune there, and plugged right in and was talking to the Menehune there. And in every tradition, every indigenous tradition, they always honor them first.
I
First.
lived in
Yeah.
Hawaii. I lived on the island of Oahu. And got to be involved with a kapuna, a local circle. We had a guest who was going up the trail one night, and we had told him you leave offerings before you go up the trail because you're going up the side of a volcano. One of the guests decided not to leave offerings and was like, oh, I don't know about those Menehune things. I ain't sure I'm here for that. That guy fell down the trail like 3 times before he got
I am not surprised. The
I
thing
thought
that
he was gonna fall off a cliff or right at one point. I mean, we're all like at one point telling him you need to go back and get right before. The whole evening for him was messed up, and on the way down, he ended up like falling on a rock for real, getting a slash on his leg.
and all he had to do was to be humble, and they were being kind. The thing I love what that old man had said to me, and I didn't know how wise what he was saying was until I grew up and I talked to like R.J. Stewart, who's one of my mentors and dear friend, and others who really knew the practices. That man gave me more in one setting of authentic fairy tradition than most people find in their whole life. And that piece of they are the original ancestors. They were here when the land was luminous and had not formed and particle yet. They came with the fall. They're the fallen angels. Well,
They're
and
old, they're ancient. I, from within my own tradition, they're part of the, like you're saying, the ancestral realm of the landscape. They are the spirit loci. They're there. They were there when the mountains were formed.
we descend from them. That's why everything I do when I pray to the ancestors, it's always human and other. Human and other, because and people, that's hard at times for people to grasp. I was teaching a workshop in Massachusetts, and it was on this great farm, and it was a great group of people though, and I spoke about the dinosaurs, and this guy, and I was talking about you must honor them. I said you must honor them. I said none of you would have even gotten here if it wasn't them. Where do you think your petrol and your tank comes from? And this guy goes, well, I'm not going to honor no big lizard. I said, okay, well, why don't you take out of you what it gave you then? And I said, like your spine, your lungs, your heart, your brain. I could keep going, but before there were mammals, it was the reptiles. I said, if I were you, I would honor those dragons. I would honor them. And he was just like, I said, don't you understand our ancestry extends back through human, hominid, reptile, and then many, many other kinds of beings, all the way back to the unicellular beings, then to the energetic beings. And I think it's important.
Absolutely.
We arrive on a stream. Like
And
this beautiful lady, look, who I'm looking at right now on this show, you, you are the tip of an ancestral iceberg, meaning
Yeah.
we're seeing you, right? In fact, my teachers, the elders who would teach me sometimes around, like just sitting around a wood stove or sitting around a campfire late at night. Well, they didn't call it that, just a bonfire. And one of them told me once, they said, you know, your head and your spine is a serpent. And they said, and at the tip of your spine is when you emerged out of nothing, out of the great nothingness. And each spine is like a generation of time, you know, as you emerge to this point where there's the mouth shrieking or exclaiming its presence here, you know. And so, and he said, and we're made out of the small, the tip of the spine to the great. And
I
he said,
love
and
that.
isn't that beautiful? And like, and it's a serpent. And he said, that serpent must be honored. And all of the generations in that vertebra. And I'll never forget that he said all the way back to the nothingness, you know, and out of which all come, you know.
Yeah, it is. And for many folks, they are just learning to set up their ancestral altars. They're just learning the idea that they have a group of ancestors within their known memories. The typical person carries a 3 to 4 generation memory of their families. And our society has so disconnected us that we have people that are still on step 1 of really connecting first to that, and then understanding that that is connected to something else, which is connected to something else, which is connected to something else, that goes all the way back to the point of beginning, that moment of nothing, that moment where matter and divinity came together, and that spark happened and the universe created. And when I tell this story, I always tell folks, pay attention to the words I just used. I said, when divinity and matter came together. All right. Our universe is divine. We are divine. We are an expression, a part of, a continuation of that. You know, and for many folks, just wrapping their head around a basic ancestral altar. And then you and I are talking about the fact that you have thousands and hundreds of thousands. I mean, within, you know, people are like, I got no ancestors. I'm like, within 10 generations, there's 4,000 of you. You can't pick one out of it.
We all go back to the original peoples. That's the other thing.
Yes.
Everyone goes back. So you want to pray to them. You don't need to know their name. Don't worry. They know you. Blood knows blood. You know,
and
that's why I say, when I cry out to them, I'll go, if you don't mind, now you got me set on fire here. I teach this thing I call pray for, pray to. Okay. The pray for is to pray for the unredeemed ancestors, those wounded, caught in paradox, caught in on what we call the bank of sorrow, on the river of blood. And so for them, I first go, and to those ancestors caught in pain or woe, those named and unnamed, known and unknown, seen and unseen, human and other. I pray truth to you. I pray joy to you. I pray, you know, whatever the stirring is. And notice I'm not saying I pray for you. I pray this to you, because the universe don't know no lack. So you're praying joy to them. The prayer becomes the horse on which, you know, the magic rides, you know. And then I could say, and to those blessed, redeemed, and exalted ancestors, I do not know your name, but I do not know your names, but I know your feel. I know your blood, and you know mine. You know, to those I call to you, I pray to you, place my feet in right relationship with the directive of my spirit, that I never stray, that I am strong and true and clear. You know, so pray for, pray to. And I was taught, always approach the altar with fire, water, and breath. Water, because we all crossed into this world across water in the mommy's womb, and then we fill up with water when we die. That's where the death rattle comes from. And so water is to the soul what fire is to the spirit. So the water is for them to come across and also to satisfy their thirst. And then the fire is to quicken their spirit and also cleanse them as they come back and forth. And the breath is to exalt them, and that's our breath as we're praying, the pray for, pray to. And again, that wording is to those named. I close my eyes because I can feel them.
Right.
Named and unseen, seen and unseen, known and unknown, human and other, you know, because it's so important that we hit those places. Some we know the names and some we don't. And see, our brain is all caught up in this. I have to know their names.
And
And
we don't. I love
don't.
to, like for I teach within my folks is to set up a maternal and a paternal space,
Yeah.
and to really connect with your mothers until you're
Yeah.
back to the first mother and know
Always
she is
remember
there
it,
for you.
umbilical cord to umbilical cord to umbilical cord to umbilical cord. You are not severed from the first mother in your
And
line.
to develop a relationship and to work that. And also on our paternal lines, the same thing. Your father's father, back to the first father. He is there for you.
Oh yes. I'd love to share. I don't know how much time we have. There's a quick, it's almost like a tune up, tuning into these, I call them those who walk in grace. It's so quick.
Oh,
May I do it real quick? Because
yes.
as people hear this, they can take this in and it'll tune into it. We are never alone, ever alone. There are ancestral spirits that walk with us all the time, to the left and to the right. I call them those who walk in grace, and I call them that because they rarely show their face. The reason is they're here. It's about you. They don't want the attention on them. Although I don't look for their names, I don't look for their faces. I just give them love. So to tune you in, it's just as simple as to the left of you, rising up from the memory of the blood and the bone and the soil, are those mothers of magic, those mothers of truth and of wisdom and of spirit, those who walk with you, those who know you, and for whom you are carrying out their work as they commingle it with yours. We sense them rise from the memory of the blood and the bone and the soil where we are, where we live. And they come together, commingling as one stream of mothers who walk in grace to our left, with their left hand under our left elbow, their right hand at our left shoulder blade, upholding and sustaining us as we walk through the world. Feel their presence now. And to the right likewise, rising up from the memory of the blood and of the bone and of the soil, those fathers of wisdom and magic and spirit, those priests and shamans, if you want to call them, the wise people, wise old men who knew things, who rise up now and come as one lineage and place their left hand at our right shoulder blade and their right under our right elbow, upholding and sustaining us as we walk through the world. Feel now the mothers and fathers of grace that walk with you, for you never walk alone.
You done tingled my toes.
You feel that, and you know what's funny? If you just a few times a day just stop and feel their presence. I often will just stop and go, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because when those things in your life where you're going down an intersection, maybe you always go right, but something said no, go left today, and you missed a fatal accident by doing that. That is those walking in grace whispering in your ear. And they love us, they walk with us. Not all of the mothers and all its fathers, it's basically there's a congruence between our lives and their lives, right? Um, and they were there when we wanted entry into this blood and gave us entry into this blood. So some you may know, some, if they show your face, you may not. Some are from 10,000 years ago or more, you know, and so, but the more you do that, even as we sit here, and I've heard people say, well, do you release them if you invoke them? I said, you didn't invoke them. You're tuning into what's always there. And by tuning into that and then having space in your life so that when you're doing your mojos, when you're doing your blessings, their hands and your hands become one. And it will just that simple practice will change your life forever.
That is amazing. I'm like, oh my gosh, on that moment, because I'm like, you done woke up things around me, Orion, and I'm just sitting here like,
Wonderful.
I'm good. I'm good.
Can you feel it? And I swear they will hold you buoyant in this world. At times you feel like you're just going to fall. They will give you guidance. There is no question you could ever ask that one of them doesn't know. You have unbelievable, we have a vast stream of knowing that goes all the way back to the beginning. And that flows with us.
Absolutely.
Always waiting to be called.
Absolutely. Yes. I would say, just so y'all viewers know real quick, y'all know I have notes, right? And I had a list of questions and I didn't ask. And I want y'all to know I didn't ask not one of them. All right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Because it was too darn good of a conversation. We are at time. I am going to ask Orion to come back and chat with me again, because I know that a lot of you folks are probably sitting there scribbling notes down with what did he just say? Can you tell, like I said, what the book is? You've relabeled it. Say the new title of the book, please.
Yes, I can hold it up too. It's a mountain conjure and southern root work, and it looks like this.
And
see it right there.
This is, like I said, he was explaining, like we were talking earlier, it was originally called The Candle in the Crossroads, and it has been redistributed. So please consider it. I can't recommend enough Orion, his organization, the folks around him. If you are interested in anything to do with any of the fairy traditions, here is a really good place to start with, where you can get good, solid information that's going to help you on whatever your journey is.
Thank you so much. Now, do you think I could leave a little blessing for everybody?
I would love you to do that.
It's just one, comes from back home in wherever you are, unless you're driving. If you raise your hands to the heavens and sense the ever-arriving spirit as we on this planet flow through the stars and the stars flow through us. And it arrives to us as a waterfall of light. And as I incant, I call down the cloak of the angels, fall down as a waterfall of light, guiding, guarding, and blessing you all by day and by night. I wrap you in the garb of angelic presence through which no bane may penetrate. May all the powers of love encompass you through all nights and through all days and in all good ways. Thank you.
Blessed be. Amen. And all the good salutation words. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me, for chatting and everything. Of course, y'all know out there, if you are a new witch, you are new to our community, let me be the first to say, welcome home. There is a place for you in our community. Come on. All right. And of course, all you witches out there know I never, ever change. It always says the same at the end. I hope y'all have as bright of a blessed day as I'm having. Go out and fly those brooms. And as always, amen, blessed be, ashe, and epobo.